Hello again. My name is Lisa Maghrak, and today we're going to go through Broken Brain, Episode 3, Losing Our Minds, Alzheimer's, Dementia, and MS. It was a longer one, so hopefully I consolidated enough and can get this through this information without too long of a video. But they basically started out by explaining that dementia is a brain disease that affects many areas of our brain: cognitive function, language, attention, memory, personality, and reasoning. In worst case scenarios, our memories can completely disappear. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia and the seventh leading cause of death. And to date, there's no good medical treatments, only toxic medications, and they have multiple side effects. And at best, they delay the time to wheelchair or time to death. So we don't have a lot of good options right now as far as in the treatment or reversal of these diseases. But they did talk about genetics. And when it comes to genetics, there's something called, there's a gene that's called APOE4, and this measures your risk or increases your risk by up to 75% if you have a specific combination of this gene. And one big myth, though, that they started out with is just because you have this gene, people think they're probably going to get Alzheimer's, and that could not be farther from the truth. It is a predisposition to the disease, but it's not a determinant. These are only risk genes. Some people genetically have a higher risk for Alzheimer's, but it's not written in stone. There's plenty of people with the gene that do just fine cognitively, and then there's other people that don't have the gene and end up getting Alzheimer's, and in some cases, bad cases. So this propensity to the disease or not, and whether we get it or not, is because of epigenetics. We can't change our genes, but we can change how they express. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Bruce Lipton and the Biology of Belief, but it's one of my favorite books, and I highly recommend it. If you don't have the book or don't want to read the book, there's also a video on YouTube. It's about an hour long. Just search for the Biology of Belief. It's really good. It goes into the new science of epigenetics and how our genes do not determine our future and what's going to happen with our health. They are just the blueprint, and we have the control of how they express by our lifestyle mostly. It's extremely empowering, and we have so much control over how our genes express, which ones are turned on, which ones are turned off. This episode explains how we do that, and that is by a process called exposome, and that is the sum total of the things we're exposed to. And this primarily includes, like we've been mentioning in the previous section episode, is by diet and nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, environmental toxins, and our gut flora. And I'm sure this sounds familiar because it was a lot of what we talked about in episode 2, the gut-brain connection. Each one of these things affects the expression of your genes every single minute of every single day. And preventative medicine is the best medicine when it comes to taking care of your brain, or pretty much all areas of your health. But for the brain, of the billions of dollars spent on Alzheimer's research, on over 400 published studies, on drug reversal trials, so on how drugs worked on reversing Alzheimer's, they found over 99% of them were unsuccessful. Some were only barely successful at delaying the progression of the disease. So the medications are looking pretty bleak, and so that's why they talked about prevention being really, really important to understand. Dr. David Perlmutter, author of Brain and Brain Maker, one of my favorite functional doctors, he's a neurologist. was sarcastically joking about how our lifestyle choices can prevent the disease that's costing our country $230 billion a year. But because it doesn't cost anything and you can't make money on it, the word isn't getting out. So that's pretty sad, but unfortunately it's true. The pharmaceutical industries want to produce a medication that treats the symptoms because that's where the money is. But we need to, again, go back to the root cause, and by changing our lifestyle, we are having and seeing lots of success and reversing and preventing and slowing down the progression of diseases. Alzheimer's is now being called type 3 diabetes. We did mention that in the last one as well, because insulin resistance is a major factor that starts the damage in our brains. Eating sugar and refined carbs causes or can cause pre-dementia and dementia. So cutting sugars and refined carbs and then adding lots of healthy fats, like we talked about before, we got to get away from this low-fat kick. Fats like coconut oils, MTC in particular, avocado, olive oil, grass-fed dairy, and meat from grass-fed animals, eggs, nuts and seeds. Avoid the toxic oils like corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, trans fats. Those are toxic to our brains and our body. The Mediterranean diet they referenced was an excellent guideline for eating. It's got a lot of the things in here that we've been talking about. Most studies show that type 2 diabetes increases your Alzheimer risk by 400%. That's incredible. And prediabetes and metabolic syndrome, so not even full-blown out diabetes, increase your risk as well. The average American eats over 150 pounds of sugar a year and 140 pounds of flour. We talked about that in the last episode. That equates to 22 teaspoons of sugar a day. And just to get a marker, the American Heart Association recommends only 6 teaspoons a day at the most. Grains are also a problem, and they said non-GMO corn is typically okay in moderation, and quinoa is okay. Quinoa is not really a grain, but that's what they mentioned in the episode. The problem with grains are that there's lots of carbs. Most of them are refined and processed and turned directly into sugar. And the second problem is gluten. Not because the wheat is genetically modified, but because it's sprayed with glyphosate. If you're eating non-organic wheat especially, it is sprayed with glyphosate, which is Roundup, and that's very, very damaging to our gut bacteria. It's a known or suspected carcinogen. It's the largest, most used pesticide, herbicide. And they said there's 1.35 million metric tons sprayed on our food and on our animals' food around the globe. That needs to stop for sure. So eat organic whenever possible. Eliminate as much exposure to these pesticides in our food sources as possible. The food we eat changes the expression of our DNA minute by minute. So basically, bite by bite, we are moving ourselves towards health or towards disease. So each bite we take, every minute of the day, every choice we make impacts our health. Sugar is the start of a lot of health concerns. Alzheimer's, depression, ADD, autism. The ketogenic diet is a great strategy, and it's being used in a lot of different things like Alzheimer's, epilepsy, brain cancer, even with good results. And the ketogenic diet burns fat. When you get into ketosis, you burn fat instead of sugar, and your brain uses that for a very powerful fuel source. So trying to be in ketosis for at least part of the day is the goal of the ketogenic diet. Even like intermittent fasting and fasting in general gets you in ketosis. So carbs are important, even essential for life, but they stress that you eat smart carbs, meaning low glycemic and loaded with nutrition and fiber. Fiber is really good because it feeds the good bacteria in your gut, so it helps with our gut health, as well as absorbing toxins in your digestive tract. So fiber is really, really good. Most people do not get nearly enough. Everyone, even young people, need to take prevention seriously. Dementia begins when you're young and takes decades to develop into the symptoms. Early warning signs include forgetfulness, like forgetting where your keys are, what you were talking about, going into a room and forgetting why you went in there, and also not being as sharp as you used to be, maybe having a brain fog, slower processing and reaction times, maybe even balance and coordination issues. So you're just not as steady on your feet or don't feel as coordinated as usual. This decline can be prevented and even reversed. So I know a lot of this seems really scary, but the powerful thing is with epigenetics, they now know that we have control over how our genes express and the route that our health takes. Many stories of near complete recovery from serious brain diseases were talked about, and I was actually going to go over a couple, just summarize them. But the first one was a woman with Alzheimer. She was 86 years old. Her family was really worried about her. She was diagnosed with dementia and early onset Alzheimer's. And she had been to the doctors and they said that they were sorry, there's nothing they could do. They gave her a medication, basically told her and her family to get their affairs in order. The family was not happy with that answer and decided to continue looking and found a functional physician, functional doctor. And the first thing they did was put her on a ketogenic diet. A couple weeks later, her daughter said, I don't even recognize her. This is like my mom used to be. I haven't seen this person in 10 years. After a couple weeks of changing her diet, then they started to add some other cognitive supportive things like ginkgo, bacopa, ashwagandha, some things that are supportive, increased her glutathione levels. And then she further improved and has been doing well even years later. That's been years ago now, and the disease has not progressed at all. So really powerful. Then the next one was a woman with Alzheimer, or MS, Dr. Terry Walls. She's actually a doctor, and she was in a wheelchair. She couldn't sit up anymore. She had to be in a zero gravity chair when fully reclined. She struggled to walk more than 10 feet, and when she did, she needed to use 2 canes. She was losing her keys, her phone. She was in tremendous pain, taking powerful steroids. She said life was really tough. That was in 2007. She she changed her diet and lifestyle, started a new protocol like what we're talking about or what they're talking about in these episodes. And in 2008, just 12 months later, was able to do a 20-mile bike ride with her family. So she said this is how much transformation can happen in only a year. So she's doing wonderful now. And she also referenced one of the big things with MS and neurological conditions, autoimmune in general, is addressing the mitochondria. Mitochondria are not working well. If they aren't working well, then your organs don't work well. In the brain particularly, that means you begin to have problems with fatigue, pain, irritability, and cognitive decline. The mitochondria were at the heart of neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, and Lou Gehrig's. And she talked about her initial intervention being a variety of vitamins and supplements to support the mitochondria. So creatine, lipoic acid, carnitine, B vitamins, CoQ10, and it really, really helped her improve. She said the mitochondria has a lot of cell membrane, which means it has a lot of fat in it. And you need to eat the right kinds of fat, a lot of omega-3s and omega-6s to make healthy membranes. So we all should be doing that. You need lots of vitamin Bs to to support the enzymes in our body and the processing that enzymes do. Minerals like zinc and magnesium, sulfur, amino acids, antioxidants, lots of nutrition, lots of nutrition. She referenced PubMed.gov. She said you can go in and search for microbiota and MS, and you'll find that there's lots of studies, many studies that have showing that there's different mixes of bacteria, and the gut is different in people with autoimmune diseases than in people without autoimmune issues. So really interesting. PubMed.gov is a really reputable, respectable, reliable source. So I encourage you to go look at that. You can get lots of information on there as well. So, all right, where were we? Okay, so in addition to diet and exercise, stress reduction, etc., it's also important to consider detoxifying your body. A lot of toxins that we carry around get stored in our fatty tissues, and most toxins are also neurotoxins. Our brain's mostly fat, so it would make sense that our brain would be affected by these toxins. We seriously need to consider heavy metal toxicity, mercury, they mentioned in particular, which a lot of people are walking around with mercury in their system, but there's other heavy metals as well. Also consider methylation problems. Methylation problems affect detoxification hormones, and the absorption of your B vitamins can really make a difference in your health. So you need to identify those things if they're going on as well. Keeps going back though to gut health, affecting how our guts are affecting our health. Leaky gut equals chronic inflammation, which is pro-Alzheimer's. Inflammation is at the root, again, of all disease. You want a low inflammation diet, low insulin, low blood sugar, low hemoglobin A1C, which is a blood marker. All these things help reverse cognitive decline. Also check for infection in the brain. They used to think that that nothing could get through the blood-brain barrier and that the brain was sterile, and they've since found that that's not true. Infections can get into the brain and cause chronic inflammation, and they found that there's more bacteria, viruses, and yeast in an Alzheimer's brain. So really important to address chronic viruses or bacteria, any kind of inflammation causing issue in the brain. Get this though, the gut microbiome actually helps keep the blood-brain barrier intact, helps keep it from letting things through, and the gut flora or the gut bacteria protects the brain through the blood-brain barrier and helps stop inflammation. So again, we're going right back to how important it is when we address the gut bacteria, we are addressing our brain and every other part of our body. Another statistic is 40% of people over the age of 85 have symptoms of dementia. This is the fastest growing segment of our population, and it's affecting 50 million people around the world. It's an epidemic that's only going to get worse if we don't do something about it. So it's really important that we're taking these measures. When you're looking at blood tests, there are things in the blood that you can check to see how you're doing as far as insulin and things like that. But they said you need to stop shooting for normal levels and start shooting for optimal levels. You want your B vitamins high, your vitamin D at a good level, which is, they didn't mention this, but it's over 50. 50 to 70 is great. A lot of people will be told if it's 30, you're doing good, but you need higher levels than that. Blood sugar levels of 100 to 105 are not optimal. Shoot for 85 to 90. Your A1C marker of 6 is not optimal. You should shoot for 5.3 to 5.4 A1C, which is ideal and associated with brain preservation. And these changes can be based on, you can make these changes with your diet, regarding sugar and fat consumption. So decreasing sugar, again, increasing healthy fats. They talked about how profound exercise is for the brain. Now, we all know that, how powerful exercise is. They talked about vigorous exercise, 6 to 7 days a week. 7 preferably, they'll take 6, but you really should be shooting for moving every single day. Interval training plus core strength training so that you can get around and not get injured and things like that. Intensity in vigorous exercise and exercise in general affects the heart rate, the blood flow, oxygen levels, growth hormones, all very important for brain health. They talked about low and slow versus hard and fast exercise. Low and slow meaning try to be more active in your day. Get out and do more things. Walk to your car. Park a little farther away from the door. You don't have to get the closest spot. People drive around and around until you get the closest spot. Just park a little farther and walk. Go up and down stairs in your home a little bit more often. Go up the stairs instead of the elevator, things like that. The hard and fast, they referenced HIIT training or high intensity interval training, where what they particularly mentioned is where you work hard for 20, 30, 40 seconds. So you just go all out, and then you go more moderate for a couple minutes, and then you repeat that several times. I was actually reading a study, I believe it was in a limited edition or a special edition Time magazine, and they did a test. It was a 12-week study, and they took 2 groups. The first group did high intensity training. So they warmed up. This was on a bike. They warmed up for 2 minutes. They went all out as hard as they could for 20 seconds. Then they moderate rode the bike for 2 minutes, all out for 20 seconds, moderate for 2 minutes, all out for 20 seconds. So 60 seconds all out so far, and then cooled down for 3 minutes. That's 10 minutes total. And they compared it to the other group that they had do 45 minutes of aerobic exercise straight. And what they found is the 10-minute high intensity group had significantly, they had the same benefits, but some of the areas were even better. So it was really a great study, and just showed that really challenging yourself for very brief bursts of time can really be beneficial, in particular in increasing those growth hormones that are so important. Okay. Meditation, very important for preventative brain health. They did, they watched some people in a retreat, and they found meditation decreases inflammation, also affects the genes that help clear amyloid protein from the brain. And when these proteins build up into a plaque, amyloid plaque in the brain, that is significant in Alzheimer's disease. So it affected those proteins. Even for novice meditators, the changes happen within days to weeks. So you don't have to be a Zen professional meditator. You can get benefits even if you're new to it. It also helps decrease anxiety, helps with sleep, improves mood. They talked about also how social interaction is so very important for our brain health. When we're not around people and we're in isolation, there's an increased risk for Alzheimer's because we're just not working and using our brain. Also depression, which a lot of times people are depressed when they're isolated, increase your risk for Alzheimer's. They talked about how the quality of your thoughts, how important they are and how much they matter to your brain health. There was a study where they actually did brain scans on a woman. She was very positive, very appreciative, practiced gratitude on a regular basis. So they called the study The Power of Appreciation. And when they took a picture of her brain, the frontal lobe was all lit up. It was really, really healthy. And then they asked her to focus on her fears and on negative things and what she was afraid of. And then they took another scan of her brain, and they found that the frontal lobe was completely deactivated. And what a difference it made, because that's also something that will lead to neurological issues. So gratitude is so important. If you have the habit of living in fear, you have chronic negative thinking, it's really worth the effort to focus on gratitude. Get a gratitude journal, start making it a habit to focus on and talk about your blessings on a daily basis, actually hourly or minute by minute, whenever you can. So wrapping up, just having the knowledge and making lifestyle changes can dramatically change your health. If your health and your brain are important to you, you have to do the work to change your lifestyle. There's just no other way. Don't wait for a cure, because once diagnosis happens, it happens very, very quickly. There is no magic pill. It's all in the things that we can do to change our biology. Again, very, very empowering. I'm going to end with a quote from Dr. Perlmutter. He said, "I'm not going to curse the darkness. It's my mission to light the flame." Take this information and light your flame in your own life. By changing your health, you can change your destiny. So I think this is really powerful information. It is so empowering knowing that we have the power in our own hands, in our own life, to go out and either prevent some of these terrible diseases or even stop the progression, and even in some cases reverse them. There's plenty of people doing that right now. So thanks so much for joining me. And if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment section. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Again, share this information if you know anybody that could benefit from it. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.